We are so proud to let you guys know that we are currently partnering with Amazon Music as a sponsor of Serie A Chronicles. I'm really excited about this one, Mina. And the only reason I'm a little bit annoyed with myself now is that we were sent a link to try it out for free, Amazon Music, and I already use it. I always think it's nice when we get to promote things that we actually use. I already have an Amazon full music subscription. I think it's brilliant. It's where I get all my music downloads. So I can genuinely say to people who are listening to this, this is where you should be listening to your music. It's where I listen to my music. You can get all your podcasts there. It's wicked. Mina, have you had a chance to give it a go yet?
Yeah, incidentally, to be honest with you, I was somebody who listened to Spotify music, and then I got the link to try this out, and I was like, you know what, let's do this. Let's figure it out, because I have Amazon everything, Amazon Prime, Amazon everything. So I was like, let's try this out. Anyway, when I was younger, my favorite movie, of course, was Clueless, because
because who wouldn't be? Yeah.
Because it would be. And the song at the very end was a song by General Public, and it was called Tenderness. Tenderness. Oh. Do you remember? Anyway, it was like such an 80s classic or 90s, I don't know. And I could never find it on Spotify, so it was really annoying me. And then I found it on Amazon. I'm like, I'm sticking with you.
Oh my goodness, that is a genuine. This is like, I hadn't heard this until we just started, which first of all, Clueless, brilliant Boston Pass. I don't know if I can say it's my favourite movie, but it was a great movie. But there is a genuine vote of approval there from Mina, who has been checking out the app. I already have it. It's got unlimited access to 90 million songs. It's got HD and spatial audio at no additional cost. I don't know what spatial audio is, but I bet it's great. It's got millions of podcast episodes, including us. And you can get the link.
Don't listen to others. We know when you're being disloyal. Don't listen to others, okay?
Mina is on it. Click the link in the show notes. Go to getamazonmusic.com/Serie A Chronicles. And full disclosure, if you do that, we get a little bit of support from Amazon Music for bringing people along too. So you'd be helping us in a big way, especially if you're keen to see us back next season.
Do it. We know there are many podcasters out there among our listeners. Podcasters of other football pods. Thank you for being the competition. Podcasters of other Serie A pods, and even podcasters of non-football pods. It's a happy little podcasting family. But we also know that many of you podcasters don't have a website for your podcast. And we know that a website is an essential tool to get your podcast noticed. Store all your episodes neatly, not to mention the benefit to you from new listeners finding you, because frankly, Google likes you to be searchable and findable.
For our website at SerieAchronicles.com, we've been using this great web hosting tool specifically for podcasts called podcastpage.io. It really is the best solution for your podcast website. You can see it working live on our own site as an example. And obviously you love our site and go there every day. And we know from experience that there's no better or simpler tool to get your own podcast website up and running in no time. So check it out at podcastpage.io. Trial it by creating your podcast website for free to see how good it looks. And when you're ready to upgrade, because it's so good, you can use the coupon code Serie A Chronicles to get the first month for free as well.
That's a great deal, by the way, to get it for free. And to do a month, it's pretty cool.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Serie A Chronicles podcast. Mina Riziki, I am feeling positively giddy this afternoon. You can tell I'm giddy because I don't even know what time of day it is. I feel like Serie A has just set the stage for these last 2 weeks so well, and every time I blink, something else has changed. How are you feeling this afternoon?
Well, I'm really suffering with hay fever.
Oh, no. Oh, I have that as well. It's rubbish.
I've started to really miss the fact that my parents are not around. You're going to think I'm crazy. But even in my old age, they come and stock my fridge. And I haven't had time to go. So I had to wake up in the morning and walk all the way to my local Tesco's and buy milk and buy like...
Can you believe it? Can you believe it, listening at home, that Mina had to go to the supermarket? Mina, I need you to help me out here, because the way you just said that, you said you wish your parents were around, made it sound like they've died, and I'm pretty sure that's not the case.
No, they're just away. God, that's awful. it's just that when they like leave me, I just don't have anyone who takes care of me.
Aww.
No, that's not true. This is why you would need your partners to live in the same countries. But anyway, yeah, so I have to go and do the shopping by myself. And I'm talking like this is such an unusual occurrence when most people do this all the time. But I'm like, speaking of Clueless, this is my favorite movie. Have you seen that part where she's like, all by myself? And she's like looking around. That's how I felt when I was like buying my milk in the morning. And they made me like teary-eyed and be like, this was
oh my God. Mina is thinking about Clueless because we've just recorded an advert for this podcast in which she mentions, because I actually don't know if that's been played yet at the time you're listening to this. If not, spoiler, you've got that to look forward to. But Mina was talking about great movies from our younger years, and Clueless is a great movie. And I feel like we could do a whole podcast, Mina, about great movies from the 90s, but we probably shouldn't, even though I
in
kind
the
of want to.
90s?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I think
Probably.
it would be.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Because, you didn't want to get me started on talking about The Craft either.
Great.
Anyway, we need to talk about there was some pretty good football this weekend that we can talk about. Like last weekend, it's like, where do you even start? But I think we start weirdly this weekend. I think maybe we start at the end because it was Verona Milan on Sunday night, Mina, and Inter had won. Inter had won a bonkers game against Empoli, which we'll get to, when they were 2-0 down and 1-4-2. So all the pressure is back on Milan now. So they're no longer top for the time being, and they've got to go to Verona. And famously, Verona is fatal Verona, fatal Verona. It's the place where Milan have twice blown a league title. 1973, they were top on the last day of the season, and they lost to Verona. Who won the league that year, Mina? Mina's team won the league that year. Mina's frozen up on me. But Juventus won the league that year because Milan didn't. Then in 1990, with 2 games left to go in the season, same thing happened. They went to the Ventegordi and they lost Milan. So now, with perfect sort of one step down the ladder on the Verona badge at a time, there's now 3 days left in the season this time. And Milan are going to Verona again. And they have this chance to be fatal again, Verona, but they weren't, and they weren't because Sandro Tonali's magnificent, Mina, or some other reason.
Well, also, I mean, I just want to mention that in 1990 they did have Arrigo Sacchi at the helm, so
mm-hmm.
I just
on his way to winning the European Cup, but
yeah, like the world's greatest tactician, probably the best ever coach, and I'm like, he's so annoying. But yes, I don't.
The Arrigo Sacchi police are coming for Mina.
Yeah, honestly, he's probably like, why does this chick really have it out for me? And like, I was the greatest ever. And I'm like, yeah, I know the greatest ever. But Pioli's better. No, I'm joking. But Pioli is remarkable. It's just, you know what it is? It's such a great week when I know there's like so much being said about Italian football, but it's Italian coaching, right? And Stefano Pioli is just that prime example of like excellent coaching, excellent ability to really develop youngsters into more consistent players. I mean, Sandro Tonali's development in the last year has been nothing short of phenomenal. Rafael Leao now it has grown, but really in the last matches, it's like he doesn't even feel the pressure. He was magnificent in this game. And I'm somebody that criticizes him a lot, I mean, Calabria's 1-2 with Tonali was, like a thing of joy for me because of how much I like this guy. But it's also the intelligence of Kalulu, the partnership with Tomori. There's so much there that I have to give the credit all to Stefano Pioli and Maldini, because it's just lovely to have this excellent harmony between management and between a coach that the players feel surrounded and comfortable. But yes, it's Leao. It's Leao's dribbling. It's Leao's direct play, but it's also Tonali playing as a striker. it's Tonali's desperation to get there, to get the goals. It's fantastic to watch, and it's remarkable when you think this is the team that had to get Ibra because they were so low when it came to mentality, and they needed somebody to grip to as leadership, to now be the side that just swallows that. The pressure for them is nothing.
Yeah, I think, Stefano Pioli at full time, one of the things he said, which stuck with me, is he just said, I'm in love with this team. And I thought to myself, I you know, I mean, you're seeing it from close. I have no connection to Milan. I know people want me to have an Italian team. My team is Arsenal, but this Milan team is very easy to love. They're very easy to get swept up in. And it's all the names you just said, Mina. I think Tonali, I wanted to sort of dwell on a tiny bit extra this time, just because I feel like in the story of this title race now, if Milan get to the end of it, he's got this really pivotal moment in it where, you know, they're drawing at Lazio and he comes up with a goal in injury time. Then they go 1-0 down away to the team that always ends the Milan title challenge, the fatal Verona, the team that sort of should have this hoodoo, this history hanging over you. And again, it's him who scores the 2 goals, turn things around. Admittedly, a lot of the work on that done by Leao, but still, I just think there's something of sort of moment of history about Tonali now. There's something of a sort of you making this your moment. And I think that it feels so fitting because, as you've just sort of mentioned, all those players, like in the end, this is so much a collective success for Milan. It's not really about one player. But if you were trying to choose a player to embody what Milan are about, this youth movement, this is a kid who supported Milan growing up, wrote a letter at 10 years old to Santa Lucia, St. Lucy, saying, you know, I want a full Milan kit, socks, shorts and shirt. Also, can I be a professional footballer when I grow up? Who took a wage cut in the summer when Milan were transitioning his loan deal into a permanent move. He said, I'll take a wage cut to keep it going. And he said in interviews since, like there was an interview in Corriere della Sera where the interviewer was saying, oh, you know, do you think one day you might play somewhere else? If the Premier League club came in with lots of money, would you want to do that? And he was like, I don't ever want to leave Milan. Like, I want to be here my whole career. I want to be a bandiera. I want to stay here. So for him to be the guy in this moment, I feel like it's just such a perfect narrative moment. And, you know, I love a good narrative. And I think probably for Milan supporters, who doesn't want their team to be sort of served in the biggest moments by the player who you feel like really loves the club the most.
Yeah, absolutely. On his birthday as well, on his 22nd birthday.
Yeah, on his birthday. Oh, one more thing on that as well. His partner, Julia Mina, on Instagram, it's not new, she uses Juliet as her name. So in Fair Verona, it was Juliet's partner who
so cool.
won the day. Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. But it is... It's kind of, there's something
he
to
needs
love
to change
about...
his to Romeo now.
Yeah, he really does. He really does. Sandro, never mind. It is kind of nice. This is why it's nice to have like Barella and to have Sandro Tonali in Milan. And you just feel these two drive the competition even further. Locatelli at Juventus as well is another one that we should mention.
Yeah.
And perhaps once upon a time it was Lorenzo Insigne at Napoli, right? But it's playing for your club because it means double. It means double, especially when you feel like right now and the pressure's on. And speaking of, like, I don't know how much you guys are into memes, but I live for these things. Yeah, there's this great film from back in the day called Airplane. And you could just see the pilot is sweating nonstop. And it was like Milan fans right now, you know, because I want to mention that Hellas Verona has always been a tough and tricky opponent to face, you know, obviously, you know. But this is especially a tricky team to face now that they have Igor Tudor. And I do want to sort of sing his praises in the moment because, like, I mean, last year they finished on 45 points. And they had the likes of Zaccagni, they had Di Marco, who's obviously at Inter. It was a good team, and Ivan Juric is a great coach. The year before that, they finished with 49 points. This year, they're already on 52. And it's just a side that plays fantastic football. You noticed in the way that they opened the game that they stayed calm, you know, and know how to be direct, how to overwhelm you, how to find those spaces and to score goals. And I feel like when you watch the side, it is scary. And then you remember that Napoli lost Champions League place because they drew to Verona last season. So this is a really scary team to go into. And you're young and you've just seen Inter do all of this. But that's why, for me, they've become mentality monsters. And when you think when we were in lockdown, there was all this talk about you know, Milan and they're still in the middle of a growth process. And that just sees the beginning of that season, they had sacked Marco Giampaolo, brought in Stefano Pioli. They lost 5-0 to Atalanta. Thought, right, we need to figure this out. Let's bring in Ibrahimovic. Let's bring in Kayer. And slowly, this team doesn't even need these focal points. They don't need Ibrahimovic as much, even though Stefano Pioli credits him with talking to them about becoming infamous, which is incidentally, where their name is recognized as being the team that wins it for Milan. Incidentally, it's the same speech that Spalletti gave Napoli, But it just goes to show you, when one of them took it on board and thought, yes, we're going to do this, another team reacted differently to that type of pressure, which goes to show you how much of a development of character there has been. And that is Stefano Pioli, but that's also because this has been a really well-managed club in general, from Gazidis to Maldini to just the fact that they're even evaluating who they should sell the club to, because they want to make sure there are no loans, that this team is well-built, that it remains sustainable. And that is something to fall in love with in this kind of atmosphere where we watch all sorts of things that we don't want to watch in football, and owners that we don't really necessarily want to be part of football, So it's nice that this club right now is choosing to do things the right way, choosing to focus on youngsters, blending it with experience and I don't know, magic, but at the end of the day, it is actually belief in the unit, belief in teamwork. And that is perhaps why, when you relied on Kessie last season, you rely on Tonali this season. And who knows, in the future, I just feel like everyone who arrives, like Tomori, Kalulu, everyone will be a success. I really trust this team because of how they run the club.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I also know that it's true. Mina's not lying about memes. I remember Mina and Kay introducing me to, was it Barry's Banter Bus on
Yes, my favorite.
On Instagram?
I love this.
We're not sponsored by Barry's Banter Bus. Inter Empoli, Mina, because this game on its own was wild. Like, if it wasn't for Verona Milan the next night also being such a fascinating game, this would have been a great place to start the podcast as well, because Inter were 2-0 down, Mina. Like, I thought that the title race was ending on Saturday. They went 2-0 behind at home to Empoli, and you thought, this is it. They've lost their heads. They can't do it anymore. Whatever the opposite of a mentality monster is, that's what I thought was happening. And then everything. And then Lautaro, who actually, since his goal drought has been pretty phenomenal in the goal scoring state, scores some great goals. I thought the first one off the outside of his boot was just such a reminder of what an incredible technical player he is. And yeah, Mina, what did you think of this one? More mentality monsters, or is this just Inter being Pazza Inter as they always are?
It's interesting you say that, because the next day Gazzetta had written a report talking about the fact that this is a team that's managed to get 22 points after conceding and going down a goal. And so they've always managed sort of a comeback. And they were saying that this is a record that's only equaled. Like, when you read that, you think, oh, wow, that's pretty good. Like, they don't, they don't ever discount themselves, right? 22 points, that's a huge amount of points. Incidentally, that's carrying the same number of points that Mike Maignan has managed to rescue for Milan. So anyway, that was what Tutto Sport wrote. But anyway, so I was thinking, oh wow, 22 points. And then they said it's a record that's equaled by Hoffenheim and PSG. Now, when you think of these two sides, you're starting to think mentality monsters. You think, if anything, they are quite the opposite. They are teams with shaky nerves that capitulate when the pressure is on, So it goes to show you that stats are not, they don't give you the whole story. And I think that's important to note, because what we have seen throughout the season is emotions have dictated a lot of how Inter do. They secure big wins. They go on a massive run and keep sort of banking on that momentum. They lose something in the game, or they feel they've been hard done by, and that also gets them to a place where they don't know how to recover quickly enough, like that happened in the derby, like against Lazio. So this is a team that has been sort of, I guess, juxtaposed to what Milan is, which is calm and serene in a lot of those moments, or at least learning to be, and to have perhaps been a little bit more emotional. But that has also worked out for them. But Barella was astonishingly good. Lautaro Martinez, this is his best season ever right now. We're talking about 11 in the last 11 games. He really is topsy-turvy, but again, he's young. So I don't want to request too much from him. But I also want to just say a quick note that, Italian coaching for me right now is at the very top. Antonio Conte robs points from Manchester City, robs points from Liverpool. Yeah, Carlo Ancelotti reaches the final of the Champions League, with a team that's has spent only 27 million in 2 seasons, you know? And then you just watch the tactical adjustments and how much they like attacked all of Empoli's strengths. I thought that was brilliant from Inzaghi. He knew exactly what, okay, right, we have a problem here. Di Marco's getting, you know, run over totally on the side. We don't have Bastoni. Let's figure this out. And he does. And Stefano Pioli's tactical adjustments are what, again, it's tremendous coaching. And I'm just, yeah, I mean, again, Inzaghi is the only one who defeated Liverpool at Anfield this year. So it's amazing where Italian coaching is right now. Sorry, I just want to make that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Simone Inzaghi conversation, I think for better or for worse, the big sort of defining moment of Inzaghi's season now is going to be the Coppa Italia final, unless Milan step up. Because if they don't win the league, you really need that to sort of hold and take away and have to talk about. And funnily enough, it's probably a huge one for Max Allegri at Juventus as well. It's a big one for both of them. And we'll talk about Juventus as well in a minute. But I sort of wanted to sort of say on this game, I think you've covered a lot of it. I think Inter finished with 37 shots to Empoli's 4. Like it's a result that was, you know, kind of looks like it was a close game because Empoli scored twice at the beginning, but wasn't actually close in the way it was played. And I think that what this sort of reinforced, though, in the end, is that I'm not saying there aren't other problems at Inter, because there are, but given how close they're going to come to winning the league, whatever happens, right? They, you know, unless they lose the last 2 games, they're probably going to be within about a point or 2 of winning the league if they don't win it. The simple fact of not having as reliable a situation at goalkeeper is going to define this season for them in some way, because even sort of taking it apart from this game in a moment, you know, Handanovic has just not saved as many shots as he would in the past. He's just not kept out some of those shots that you look at and think, well, it's not even necessarily a mistake, but you know, you want your good keeper to save some of those sometimes. And then you've got the calamity against Bologna when Radu comes in, and I think in a season defined by small margins, the difference from that to Mike Maignan is just so big that we can talk about all the other things that have gone on with these teams.
No, I agree.
I can say all the things I want to say about how much I think Milan are playing great football, but having a good keeper and having reliability in that position changes whole seasons. And I think it's probably one of the really big under focused points of the season.
It's a great point that you mentioned, but sort of, you know, when you think about the fact that I don't know whether we should applaud coaches who just manage to make it through even with absences or with big holes in their team, whether that be a goalkeeper or not, or whether that really is a difficult thing and that shouldn't take away from a coach's brilliance either. Because I look at the fact that, you know, you never thought that this Milan side has had so many different injuries, so many covers, and you think, like, I mean, when we were discussing in the Q&A about what we would change within Milan, what we said, basically the entire forward line, barring Leao, you know, that's what we said. And you look at sort of Inter and you think, De Vrij hasn't had the greatest of seasons. It's been quite up and down. Skriniar is amazing, you know, but it is kind of like you take away Bastoni or you take away Brozovic, and the team sort of has a lot of gaps. And I don't know whether that they don't feel like, but Di Marco gives a lot from an attacking point of view, but takes something away from a defensive point of view. But when you compare that to teams that have managed to find a way through, even with absences or injuries or things, Inter have become a little bit too dependent on some of their stars. And I don't know whether it's because they really are that good that you would be, or whether there's a problem there in the sense that the tactics are too dependent on them because, well, the squad's not. I don't know. What would you say that is? Because when we talk about Mike Maignan, is it, why don't they have a backup keeper? Because this was a problem last year as well, you know? And I don't know whether Onana is really the response to all of this. Maybe he is.
Yeah, the goalkeeping situation is sort of a long coming problem for Inter, because Handanovic has been so great and then has been, I think, declining for a little while, but it feels like there's been a more significant dip this season. It's a really big question in the end about, do I sort of believe in Inter's collective as much as I do in Milan's? No, but I think they are individually more talented, and that's why I think if they just got a little bit more solidity that one position, that they probably would have got across the line. But they might still, Mina, there's still 2 games to go. Milan have Atalanta next, which even though Atalanta are having one of their weaker seasons of the last few, they're still competing for Europe. Inter have got 2 teams fighting against relegation, all still to play for, I think, in this race.
Can we just have a moment for
sure.
Aslani's ability to bring down that ball and score?
What a beautiful touch. Yeah.
What? Oh, my gosh. I thought that goal was... And we were talking about him because obviously they sold Samuele Ricci to Torino, but because they said he was really ready. But wow, when I saw that, I'm like, maybe he is ready. Anyway,
yeah, really, definitely. I mean, plenty of subplots here as well. I mean, of course, Pinamonti, Inter player scoring the opening goal against them. What a story that would have been if they'd lost.
Yeah, honestly, he needs to go back. He's wonderful, wonderful player.
I think he'll be back there next season. Also check out Mina did a Patreon episode on coaching styles this week, and I know Mina's got loads to say about Italian coaches, so yeah, check that out. Chronicles Tifosi. So Mina no longer in the title race for a little while really, but Juventus still trying to get to the end of the season. I don't know what they're trying to do at the end of the season. Actually, they've already got the top 4 as well, but you would have thought they were trying to get to the end of the season in okay shape. Instead, they lost to Genoa and had Dusan Vlahovic in a strop. Now, that's one side of the story. On the other side of the story is Genoa, and perhaps the side that we should focus on more, because we were talking just last week about Mimmo Criscito and his tragic situation of having sort of stayed from March when he could have gone to Toronto to stay and fight the relegation fight with Genoa, only to then be, despite being a really good penalty taker, be the guy who misses the penalty at the end of the derby with Sampdoria, which looks like it's relegated Genoa. Redemption in the space of a week, Mina, because it was him who scored the 95th minute, I think, penalty to win the game against. Even as a Juventina, you must have been feeling a little bit of love for Criscito in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, Twitter was just like, stupid Juventus. Yeah, and in my head, I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, this game doesn't mean anything. And they've got the Coppa Italia. Like, really, they just didn't care. Yeah. And I kind of liked it because there was a part of me that thought Di Giulio was doing a charitable service in that match. Like, here's your first goal, here's your second, Now, what do you need anymore? You got the 3 points, Criscito is like back up, But when the penalty came and I was like, oh, this is so awkward. And in my head, I was like, what if he loses this? Like, this is over. Like, this is terrible, But he doesn't, and he scores it. And I loved the way that the coach, Blessing, ran up to him and just hugged him. And everyone just surrounded him because you knew how much it meant to him and how awfully he felt after, obviously, like you said, the fact that he missed it against Sampdoria and thought that he relegated his club. So just on a heroic note, it was fantastic. And frankly speaking, I'm happy for them because it's better to score that. If you had to choose one penalty, it's better to get that and get 3 points than to get a draw against Sampdoria, at least for me. So, yeah, I mean, Sampdoria lost anyway to Lazio over the weekend. So hopefully that just gives Genoa a little bit more of hope of surviving this, because it's them and Salernitana that I would really like to stay up. But I know I can probably only get one. But on another note,
well, that's the thing, because if they had drawn with Sampdoria would only be a couple of points outside the relegation zone. As it is, Sampdoria have got a 4-point buffer with 2 games left. Might still not be enough. I mean,
what do you think?
Just
it's
sort
hard
of
games.
Yeah, well, let's fill in the gaps quickly on that relegation fight, because it was a lot that happened this weekend. So Venezia, who we have given off as dead and buried for some time now, they won their first game since February. They'd lost, how many in a row? I should have counted this before I started. They lost a lot of games in a row before this one. They were 3-2 down against Bologna.
2022.
Yeah, and came back to win.
But illegally, this was an illegal win. I mean, this was like a huge error in goalkeeping.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't a penalty. Yeah. Which is really
and a very
awful.
lucky penalty.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're almost certainly still going down. They would have been relegated if Salernitana had won anyway, and Salernitana were beating Cagliari themselves up into the 98th minute when Giorgio Altare wins the header that that equalises for Cagliari and keeps Cagliari in this fight. I mean, it really looked like Salernitana were going to be the team that were the big winners this weekend that pulled themselves out of it. But that draw keeps it all to play for. Just to sort of say it for anyone who hasn't checked the league table, you have Spezia on 15th on 33 points, Sampdoria also on 33 points, Salernitana on 30, Cagliari on 29 and Genoa on 28. So realistically, it's still the three, Salernitana, Cagliari and Genoa, who are the most likely to be fighting for that one spot for safety. But it's not impossible that one of Spezia or Sampdoria gets dragged into it if they lose the last two games. I have no idea, Mina. I couldn't predict this from 1 minute to the next, let alone from 1 week to the next. Oh, that's a cruel question.
Oh, is it? I don't even know what's cruel anymore. No,
it's relegation.
Let's say who you want to survive. That's a nice way to put it.
I think that the problem with that is that there are, you know, I root for the narratives, like I always tell you, me, and there's narratives everywhere. I think Criscito saving them after everything would be a wonderful story because, of course, you know, he's made that sacrifice. He's chosen to stay there and finish out the season, and he's had that horrible moment against Sampdoria. I think Davide Nicola saving Salernitana as he saved Crotone, and having been sort of someone who kept Torino and Genoa up in between, I think his sort of story as Serie A's great escape artist is wonderful. And for me, one of the iconic images of this season is always going to be him waving his shoe at people from the sideline. So it's hard not to feel some more towards Salernitana. I also think they've got such an incredible support down there at the Arecchi that it's hard not to sort of want good things for that as well. I mean, they're such an odd team, Salernitana, because there really aren't players in that group who you think, wow, they've been, you know, the standout. Milan Juric, who's 31 years old, and Simone Verdi had a big sort of role this weekend. But, you know, who is it in that team that stands out for you other than the manager, Nicola? So I think his work is something remarkable.
Director.
Yeah, and I just think there's something to like in all of these teams, and if I had to guess, I would say Salernitana still have had the better sort of trend of forms that you think they'll be all right, but this equaliser reminded you that nothing is set in stone and it's also fragile.
I just wanted to quickly mention, because I thought it was hilarious, like it took all my ability to stop laughing, but Walter Mazzarri was sacked, obviously, from Cagliari, and they brought in Alessandro Agostini, who managed to get that point for them. But when he was saying, there was all this news at the time that he had called them worms because they didn't have a backbone, and then he had to come out and deny this, which is just, it is really, really quite awful that he had to come out and deny this. So apparently for Cagliari, they had, you know, reached the end of their tether when he was saying that to them, and thought that it's best to let him go. He has since come out and said, of course, I didn't say these things, but I did think that was a hilarious moment in the relegation battle when I thought of Cagliari. But well done for them for getting that point against Salernitana, although there was a part of me where it broke my heart, because obviously I do want Nicola to manage to survive. I just want to get back to Juventus for a split second.
Definitely, do.
And obviously there's just two takeaways from this. Like, my main one is obviously Keane missed blind sitters at this point. You know, I'm thinking like these should be very easy goals for somebody who had scored the kind of goals that he did when he was at PSG. So obviously there's something there right now where he doesn't feel capable, or there's a lot of pressure on him, or he's too desperate. A little bit like, do you remember Simone Zaza as well, who would sometimes just try to do so much because he really wanted to prove himself? And I think that's why Keane's falling into it. And I guess what this brought up for me is I look at Milan and I look at how Maldini just stands next to Pioli, who talks to the players. He sits down with Tomori and has a coffee with them. He raises the hopes and he talks to his players on a very human level. And he does his job in sort of maintaining the lightness of the dressing room harmony, of ensuring that there's support all the time. And instead, I hear things from Pavel Nedved like, well, this is the guy that can cover up the goals of Ronaldo, and we should be expecting 25 goals from Moise Kean, and so on and so forth. And he's nodding his head, or angry, or swearing like he was last season alongside Fabio Paratici. And I wonder, what is the point of Pavel Nedved at Juventus? Because I don't entirely know what it is that he does other than just looks like he's always angry. So, look, I get it. Juventus are not playing the kind of football you want. I don't know why you're not at Barcelona, because I'm sure Xavi plays the kind of football you like. We tried it your way. It didn't work because you were angry when Sarri was there. You were angry when Pirlo was there. So what is it that you're doing? Because you're putting a lot of pressure on a lot of these youngsters. Are you sitting down and having a coffee with them and giving them the kind of support that Maldini is doing with the likes of Tonali and Tomori? Are you somebody that's standing beside your coach, or someone where tabloid fodder is being created because of how often you turn or roll your eyes at what's being done? Oh, Dybala subbed off and that annoyed you, If you want to be a coach and you're saying he should be placed closer to goal, then be a coach. If you want to be a director, then figure out a way of being useful. But right now, I think that he's causing more harm than good. And it's really, it's creating an unhappy atmosphere. The second thing I wanted to bring up is obviously Vlahovic looks really upset, And when I talk about Italian coaching, one thing that's really important to me is how much you bond with your players. And what's great about something that happened with Inter when they were going through their moments was how much Barella kept blaming himself for the fact that he wasn't performing at his highest levels in those matches against, for example, Genoa. And it took Inzaghi sitting down with him, laughing with him, saying to him, "You're still brilliant, stop this, this is just a game that you're supposed to enjoy yourself." And what Pioli's done for the likes of Tonali and elsewhere. And there's a lot being said now about Allegri not putting Vlahovic in the right position. But what he is doing is sharing a joke with him, telling him come play a basketball, trying to maintain the lightness. Because right now, Vlahovic is being really hard on himself. He is angry that he's not getting the goals. He's angry that he's not going to win top scorer this season. And that's normal because he's a kid and we're asking a lot of him. But I don't feel like there should be this much pressure on a 22-year-old. He is still 1 year younger than Rafael Leao. He is still the same age as Sandro Tonali. These are still kids, and they're not going to be consistent like Lautaro Martinez. They have ups and then they have downs, and we should be okay with that. So if you want kids to be given a chance, then you should support all their inconsistencies as well. And I think that always blaming other people for everything in a way where we've just watched how Roma have reached the Conference League final because of the support of the fans, because of everyone being on board. I wonder why we don't follow that example a little bit more and do what Milan is doing right now, which is stand together through the good times, through the bad times, stand together. Because, to put all this pressure on Vlahovic and be like, oh, well, he's so angry, and all these articles written about it, it helps nobody. It really helps nobody. And I guess I just really wanted to get that off my chest.
Going to give a quick shout out to some new Chronicles Tifosi patrons. As always, I wanted to say thank you to Mark Dunn, Mustafa Ali, Kevin Chang,
Mike Guerreri, Cameron Reese-Walker, and Peter Braidwood. Thanks, guys, for supporting us and for becoming Tifosi patrons.
If you would like to join the Chronicles Tifosi, you can go to seriachronicles.com/Patreon or click that Chronicles Tifosi button on our website. We're incredibly grateful always for the support you guys give us and for joining up. And if you do it, you also get access to our amazing catalogue of mini Patreon episodes that we create as well. To support the podcast and help us keep producing it, you can also just leave a one-time tip if you would like to via Ko-fi. There is again a button on the website. Right, Mina, last piece of business for this week, I think. I did a mini-sode, speaking of Patreon, on Roma Leicester, but you haven't had a chance to speak to everyone about that. How did you enjoy watching Roma? Were you, I think you've already told us from what you just said about Vlahovic, were you swept up in 70,000 fans at the Stadio Olimpico? And who cares it's Conference League, they're going to a European final?
Yeah, I think that those are the two things that, because I like watching patterns and seeing, sort of basing my judgments on patterns. And I was noting how having that kind of support. And when Tammy Abraham was saying, this is for you guys, this is for you guys. I mean, I looked at them accompanying the team bus and I thought, God, that's astonishing. It's beautiful. And I sort of wonder why we don't all do that all the time, and obviously it's much harder to do this when your team is failing, and I get that. But when that kind of support can create move mountains and create champions, I don't know. I just think it's so exciting. But for this, I also want to say, like, that's a lot of it. We haven't always been great about Jose Mourinho on this pod because I at least have for sure questioned some of his tactical choices, wondered why there was a need to get rid of Fonseca, or if there wasn't this huge, brilliance or something that was coming, that I saw a tangible difference. But I do see this tangible difference now in the fact that they have reached the final, the fact that there is a better mentality and a certain level of maturity that's being shown right now. And of course, it helps when you do have, like Tammy Abraham. But for sure, this is a man who understood the culture at this club, understood what it means to the fans, and understood how to package all of this together to unite. And that is effectively the secret weapon to coaching a team like Roma. It is the united front. It is the fact that this is a team that is discussed endlessly and relentlessly on the radio, in the media, and within the city. And everything is felt, every tension, every moment of anxiety. And he sort of eradicated it and created a place of love. And for that, I mean, there's so many different types of coaching. There are great tacticians, there are great man managers, motivators, but he is really very good when it comes to setting atmospheres and trying to align themselves to what the values are and what's important to the fans. And I think that with Roma, it's been fantastic to watch their journey until the end, and a lot of that is down to him and what he's managed to do with the fans.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with what you've just said more. I think there's two elements to why this was a big deal. I mean, the first of which is Roma are a huge club and they've won Scudetto before, but actually, despite being a huge club with, representing half of the Italian capital and having a huge fan base, they've actually not won a European trophy bigger than the Fairs Cup, right? They haven't had European success. So, like, winning a European trophy doesn't matter that it's not the Champions League yet. The Champions League would be wonderful, but it's still a European trophy. And I think the other point is the one that you've just sort of been alluding to, which is I think that Jose has connected with the fans in such a human way, in such a personal way, that he's been able to write this narrative together with them, to write this story together. Like, this matters because they say it matters. It matters because the manager and the fans are willing to look at each other and say, we want this, we want to do it. And I think that sometimes modern football can lose that a bit in a way that's a bit sad, because we always want the biggest thing. We always want the Champions League. We always want the single most important trophy you can win, the Champions League, the World Cup, and which league is the greatest league, who's the GOAT. We're only interested in the single biggest thing. Well, you know what? In the end, there can only be one Champions League winner every season. There can only be one Ballon d'Or winner. That doesn't mean that all the rest of football doesn't have the power to stir your emotions, to make you care, and to give you in your city something to feel magnificent about. And that's what's so great about football, is that, that it has that ability to make you to go on a journey and to fall in love with a team and to have this sort of ride together. And I think that's probably always been one of Jose's greatest strengths, is that when he gets that buy-in from supporters and from his players, he tells stories. And I think he's telling a story in Rome right now that is really compelling to watch. And I'm enjoying watching it. And yeah, I think there's been things he's done this season I haven't been impressed with, but this part of it, you can't deny that he's done that. He's made that bond, and he's making it special, which is really fun to watch. Speaking of finals, there's another final coming up, Mina, that some people may end up listening to the podcast after it's already happened. It's on Wednesday night. Coppa Italia final, Inter against Juventus. We've already slightly touched on it, but I don't know. Who do you think this matters more to? I look at it as Allegri needs something to sort of hold on to after a slightly disappointing first season back. And Inzaghi, I think, in his own narrative, in the story he wants to tell of his first season at Inter, wants to be able to say, look, even if we don't win the league, I won the Supercoppa, I won the Coppa Italia, I got us to the Champions League knockout rounds. It's not so bad. So who do you think it matters more to? I think it's a big one for both of them, maybe.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's zero titoli, right, for Juventus if they don't win this. But at the end of the day, I feel like in many ways, Allegri's established as a coach. He's already hated, so it doesn't really matter if he's hated even more after this. It's kind of like, It's interesting actually because Calcio Mercato released the results of what Italians thought of as the best coaches in Italy that have ever come. And Carlo Ancelotti, it was Carlo Ancelotti, Enrico Sacchi in the top 3 positions, and in the last 40 years, right? Anyway, I thought it was interesting that Allegri came fourth and ahead of Fabio Capello. So at the end of the day, I just feel like people know that this is sort of a downtime for Juventus, and I don't really think the Coppa Italia changes much for them. But for Inzaghi, I think it does, because I think that he is going to be reeling from the fact that they did lose this at Bologna, maybe in his head or whatever it is. And he is somebody who is remarkable in knockout competitions. He's won 7 trophies out of 9 finals. He's very good throughout his career, even at under 21 level. He is the master of these competitions. And even with his Lazio side, he reached the knockout stages of the Champions League, went into Scudetto last season, So for him, I think this matters a little bit more. I don't know how much it matters to the club in general, but it's always one extra trophy. If you've missed out on one, then you can say, well, we've got another 2. But it's like you said, it matters to both of them. I just think that Inter will probably get this because of Inzaghi.
So you think Inter will win?
Yeah, I do. I think that they really, really care about this in a way that I just feel like there's a part of Juventus that's already given up. I mean, you look at that team and you think, Arthur's just, it's almost like they're trolling you with this team. Arthur just, his passing sometimes just really angers me. Rabiot, it's back to hideousness. Desciglio's opening doors for people. I feel like Juventus have reached the stage where okay, let's just forget about this and start again. And hopefully with a much better side, But for Vlahovic, it's going to matter. And so, and for Dybala, it's going to matter. And I wonder whether Dybala will start, because the question marks are being raised as to whether or not he will start despite being top scorer for this season. And if Dybala is your top scorer of the season, then you know what kind of a season it's been.
Yeah, I think actually, in a weird way, it's a very compelling final to me, because I'm really not sure when I come to it, because I think that on the one hand, in my gut, I feel like Inter are playing better football. I think that aside from that game against Bologna, they've been quite good recently. That game against Bologna, which is just this weird anomaly. And you look at how they sort of dealt with Milan in the semi-final second leg, when they just sort of, the scoreline was a little misleading, but still, they put 3 goals past them. I say all that though, and then I come back to the thing that we've talked about before, Mina, which is that actually, even if you put in the loss this weekend, there is one team in Serie A that has taken more points in 2022 than Juventus. It's Milan, who are top of the league. So the form guide still says that Juventus are doing fine. Even for all the complaints about their style, for all the complaints about... So I just don't know at this final. I really don't. And our producer, Simon, thinks that you absolutely can't keep your job as manager if you lose the Supercoppa and the Coppa Italia final.
Anyway, we want to say thank you for listening to the show, and I think that's all we have time for this week. But join our Patreon membership if you want to support the podcast and help us to keep producing it. You can also leave us a one-time tip via Ko-fi. Just click the button on the website. You can, of course, find us on Twitter at Nikki Bandini, at Mina Rizuki, and pose us any questions that you may have. And follow Serie A Chronicles on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you for listening to us, and ciao for now.